Gymnasium. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Professor Carlo Galli. He's professor in the Dipartimento di Storia, Cultura e Civiltà dell'Università di Bologna. He's also president of the Fondazione Gramsci Emilia-Romagna, member of the editorial board of Il Mulino, and founder and director of the journal Filosofia Politica. He's also the chief editor of the Enciclopedia del Pensiero Politico and member of the Italian Parliament. Perhaps more important for the theme of today's keynote is the fact that Carlo Galli has worked on the whole spectrum of political theory's definition and of sovereignty. In fact, his which delves into Machiavelli, Hobbes, Weber, Schmidt, Vittoria, Adorno, Arendt, Strauss, Berlin, Levi, among many others, constitutes one of the most complete and poignant accounts of modern sovereignty. Modern sovereignty understood as a sovereignty that originates in crisis, that founds itself as necessity on the impossibility of its foundation. So I'm very happy to be here welcoming Professor Carlo Galli to this keynote, whose title is Origins of Modern Sovereignty and its Current Transformations. Please welcome Professor Carlo Galli.
Thank you, Professor Benotto. Welcome and good evening to all of you. And I begin my conversation with stressing that my point of view is not Foucaultian. What are we talking about when we say state? We are talking about the modern configuration of the relationship between politics and capitalism, as well as between Europe and the rest of the world. This configuration has been long-winning and built to the essence of the European empire from 17th to the end of the 20th century. As a matter of fact, the modern state entails a new form of the world that rises from the valorization of the discovery of America, both in the imperial transatlantic form, Spain and England, and in the state form within Europe. State is traditionally defined through the coordinates of sovereignty, population, and territory. Sovereignty itself is nowadays understandable not so much through the three forms of power defined by the constitutional tradition, that is, legislative, executive, and judicial power, but rather as a contradictory combination of political, economic, and cultural power. Political power includes legislative, executive, but also judicial and military power. Economic power is mainly private, but has public effects, and it actually determines important elements of society and of international politics. Cultural power concerns legitimating narratives and cultures that in many forms project an image of a certain way of life, both inside and outside. These powers are not synchronized, and actually they can significantly diverge globally. Nonetheless, I would like to suggest that they can be ascribed ultimately to specific political units, in a broad sense definable as states, which are political spaces in a strong sense and which do not vanish in a smooth globality inhabited by an abstract quantity. Yet they are no political spaces. They are not enclosed and self-sufficient as the modern sovereign state has conceptually claimed to be. They are rather crisscrossed by lines of power, violence, and movement that prevent their closure, that are not inserted into the Westphalian dimension, and that must be deciphered with a new discovered gaze. There are two possible perspectives on the origin of the state and of the transformation of politics. The first one collects the reasons of unity, of legal stability, of progress, whereas the second one is characterized by the emphasis on the continental dynamics maintained by the state. The first perspective actually includes a set of diverse positions, rationalist philosophers, as well as the work of astrologists like Max Weber and of the anti-manifest theorists. The perspective starts from the legal unitary hypothesis that the state is a closed space, that the population is composed by individuals entitled with rights, that sovereignty gains its legitimacy through the culture or through participation and manifests itself as legal rational representative power. The crucial aspect here is that the political form tends towards unity, which is considered as historical value and the progress in relation to the international heterogeneity of the empires. In this view, the state poses itself as a mobile frontier between sovereignty and the animal nature. Its movement progressively restricts the natural space of worlds by taming and civilizing them within the fences of sovereignty, although the animal is just the same, obscurely uncanny, because also the sovereign has distinct traits as Derrida added. The matter of the frontier of civilization is level, which includes progressively lands and peoples within the state. In the beginning of the world was America, John Locke said in his second treatise, and in the end of the world will be civilized. The relationship between the West and the West is harsh and unequal, not linear. Level and state are the civilization that expands itself throughout the world in a basically universal way. According to this narrative, colonialism is nothing but a stage in the path of civilization. In this perspective, the whole world can be stabilized, and there is no need of a pacifist stance for imagining a system of pacific coexistence among states, like the United Nations. Moreover, the whole earth is open to capitalism. Of course, one needs to take a stand for market capitalism against common economy for the reason that the latter does not work. But in principle, economy is not in contrast with politics. In other words, from civil society within and from colonialism without do not arise insurmountable contradictions. According to most other analysis, the state and the market stay side by side as two forms of Western materialism that can be exported over the planet and are internally very connected. As a matter of fact, this expensive model of politics and of economy, the combination of a sovereign frontier and of the frontier of labor, encompasses the two opposed characterizations of the state, the social and the neoliberal. In other words, it includes both the modern and the postmodern form of state. We can define the second perspective about the genesis and transformation of the state as the line of the two, and use conflict as its exemplary representative. Also, the American perspective obviously is based on the two, but aims at the one. In the realm of internal politics, we ought to shoot the thesis that the political, namely the constituent power, is intrinsically dual and conflicted. In fact, the relationship between friend and enemy transcends the state and the institutions and cannot be fully neutralized or legalized. The origin of the sovereign political form is not the contract, but rather the conflict. As Derrida could be related stated, sovereignty is a coupled force. The permanence of this unknowable origin implies that legitimacy, that is the original conflict, does not fully coincide with legality, the universal form of the right. The unity of the state can always be challenged by the internal enemy. Consequently, the sovereign political order presents itself not only as legal or administrative rational inclusion, but rather as decisive expression. From this point of view, Schmidt radically differs from Gramsci. Furthermore, especially in his book on pronouns, Schmidt revealed international politics by means of an epochal genealogical theory, according to which the European state origin results from the balance between the smooth space of the sea, corresponding to the English naval and technical power, and the striated space of the land, corresponding to the politics centered on the European states. This relationship between continental Europe and England, however, is not sufficient for the understanding of the state. It is also essential to consider the colonial adaptation of the extra-European territory. Being conceived as vessel use, This is the space where the limited war between states that reciprocally recognize themselves does not exist, and where the indiscriminate violence towards the citizens is played. The imbalance between Europe and the rest of the world adds itself to the balance between land and sea. This combination forms a nous that is the order oriented by a concrete origin of the new school of Europe. This means that the nous entails enemy. Frontiers, frictions, conflicts are its constitutive parts, and it implies internal hierarchy or ominous confrontation with the outside, but for sure not the autonomy of its pockets. For Schmitt, the modern state has independence together with their centers. Nonetheless, its anti-universalism endures also beyond the state in its hypothesis of the great spaces. These are meant as subjects of the post-national and pluralistic norms of the earth. In fact, Schmitt further quotes Mano, and this slogan has it to the essence. These great spaces, too, are to be understood as completely autonomous one from the other, autarkic and self-sufficient. The economy and the technique, with their universalistic tendencies, are indirect powers that politics, the direct power, must always confront. In some for Schmitt, definitely, and for Max Weber, there is no compromise between economy and politics. The first one is generally smooth and universal, whereas the second one is particularly conflictual. Schmitt is the taker of exception and exclusion. Nevertheless, he sees them only in politics, while Marx situates this contradiction essentially within the economy. This fact errors the use of Schmitt Marxism in an anti-liberal sense, but not entirely homogeneous to Marxist thought. Neoliberalism is the fourth revolution of the 20th century, after communism, fascism, and social democracy. This revolution took place in the 80s and gave birth to dreams of global peace. The Lex Mercatore and the complex world governance were supposed to substitute the states as regulatory principles of international law and the aggressive dualism of the two empires that confronted themselves in the Cold War. In general, the state, both communist and democratic, was recognized as a problem and was supposed to give way to the individualistic competitive power of the utilitarian subject, the only one compatible with the new phase of capitalism. The market was supposed to become the new norms of the earth. The social state should be replaced with a minimum liberal non-sovereign state, a tool of the economy, whose rules it was supposed to promote and guarantee on a certain territory, thus playing non-emergent but certainly instrumental role. But the full overcoming of modern political conceptuality in the direction of the total unity of the world was never realized. Differences, conflicts, wars, and authoritarian hierarchies have multiplied. Under the pressure of the new forms of economy, the political and juridical unity of the states is changing direction toward the practice of inequality and exclusion. The state of social security is turning into the state of security to go. From the international perspective, there is first of all a high rate of interdependency, like the underlying the United States and China, where the second one, in fact, finances the ethics and the bets of the first one. On the other hand, there is a high rate of military conflicts in the shape of threats of conventional wars or of a multifarious set of asymmetrical or low-intensity wars dispersed on different fronts and of massive migrants and refugees movements. The whole world is crisscrossed by conflict lines and by nomadic and migratory resurgences, by terrorism and by new frontiers that try to stand down and that build a new international political spaces, very complex and loaded with liabilities. Globalization is also a continual global war. All this does not mean the end of sovereignty tomorrow. On the contrary, it survives in a predatory civil way. Differences are established in the law itself. The birth of a criminal of the enemy, of the immigrant, of the poor, of the Muslim, are telling of this trend. The force of the state manifests itself in the limitation of rights and of freedom that occurs primarily in a factual and administrative way. At the same time, legitimacy involves from the national ability to analyze ethnic or cultural foundations of identities, or to the security of the nations, emergency as we come to know. But at the same time, sovereignty is questioned for by citizens as a political defense against the social effects of the new economy and of its crisis, particularly the destruction of the middle class and of the working class. Sovereignty is questioned not only as a force in such an repressive sense, but rather as the fundamental factor of a new claim for security and justice, that is for stability, that is for statehood. What is asked is not only that society be compatible with the needs of the market, but also that the market be compatible with the needs of societies, something that might derive from the action of politics. Behind what is heralded as anti-political populism by the mainstream media, a kind of politics that originates from below, but is always accompanied by a very traditional demand from above, there is the political need to overcome the capitalistic enemy. In this scenario, the state is marked at the same time by less and more politics, which means less democracy and more plebiscitarianism, less institutional complexity and more authoritarian simplification. In other words, the exacerbation of the novelty effects produces the return of archaic forms of exercise of politics. The contemporaneity is the unpacified coexistence of different temporalities and also of different spaces and conflicting lines that prevent political forms to find any kind of closure. Given this contradiction, the states exist as political subjects, as bounded divinity, hybridized with behemoth and turned into amphibian and ambiguous monsters, figures of order and undesirable at the same time. This situation contradicts, for contrasting reasons, both the models of conceptualization of state explained above. A world unity in the neoliberal sense does not exist, because the states, though transformed, continue to exhibit inside and outside political and military bodies which are not immediately identifiable with the economy. Nevertheless, we are not even confronted with the scenario of autonomous great spaces portrayed by Spain for two reasons. On the one hand, the emergency that today cuts through the political realities does not correspond to the exception, for it escapes the anthropomorphogenetic decision. If anything, emergency has become the permanent way of being of politics. On the other hand, the big political areas of influence that are visible in the world are not at all autonomous or autarkic. Rather, we stress it again, they are open both to powers external from territory and to internal conflict and insurgencies. Even from Schmidt's perspective, the present situation is anarchic. The logics of politics play a crucial role in the processes of globalization on the international scene. Three different strategies of political control of the economic dynamics, all through different attempts to control them, operating, aiming to maximize the power of the main global political actors. The United States have been swimming. After the victory over USSR on the one hand, they pursued an indirect economic power. This was the aim of the treaties subscribed by Obama in order to create free exchange zones dominated by the United States. On the other hand, the United States improved their military presence all over the world. This overtly and directly unilateral logic was applied by both German and Trump. The latter, moreover, threatens new economic wars through protectionism and this ideological claim of merit first. Anyway, the cultural power of the United States still resists as the strongest in the world. The constant aim of this swinging was the maximization of the power of the United States alone. Yet in China, the other major actor of the global age, has an intense and unequivocal political character. The political leading force of the country, the Chinese Communist Party, is unity. The market economy is instrumentally used in order to produce more intense development than the one that the current economy would pursue. The foundation of this politics is the political choice of Mexican capitalism and socialism under the party hegemony, the so-called Chinese road to socialism or civilization of Marxism. Actually, the Chinese bourgeoisie is expropriated with its political rather than economical influence. It cannot express its worth on the political level, since politics is monopolized by the Chinese Communist Party. Thus, the economic power is able to act on the political level only indirectly, that is, self-corruption. Lastly, the cultural power is provided, on the one hand, by an interpretation of Marxism as the eternal love, expressing the universal dream of the humankind, namely socialism. On the other hand, by claiming a national right to communism through the recovery of the Chinese traditional culture and of the Confucian belief in the supremacy of harmony over conflict, of duties or rights, of peers, of law. In short, according to the Chinese narrative, socialism must not coincide with planned economy. Rather, it consists of an interior one-party state that pursues the universal aspiration of socialism in a peculiar and specific way. On the one hand, free commerce on a world scale. On the other, a strong regional politics against any external imperialism. From this point of view, China consciously meets Clausewitz's theory, both concerning the one-party system and the issue of the great spaces. At the same time, from the economic point of view, China is afraid of the commercial protectionist wars threatened by the new United States concerns. A communist and liberal great space there, but also a great space with its own area of influence in Eastern Africa. All of this shows the complexity of the present times. Concerning Russia, it structurally differs from China, both from an economic and from a demographic point of view. However, Russia shares with China the authoritarian political management of globalization, with its Eurasiatic geopolitical doctrine, its orthodox political theology, its false projection towards Asia and the world seas. The German orderly liberalism, or social market economy, is the third way through which politics has tried to establish its primacy before and during the global age. This perspective is based on optimistic assumptions about state and society and on the idea that the market should be politically defended by the state, which ought to eliminate all reasons for conflict, such as the excessive claims of trade unions or the company's tendency to form countries. The orderly hypothesis was realized in Germany after World War II through two main policies. On the one hand, a steady and compact link between banks and companies, trade unions and entrepreneurs organizations, state and labor, school and economy. On the other hand, the neo-mercantile orientation of the economy toward export rather than toward interior demand. This approach, that was modified in a neoliberal direction by Schröder's reforms in 2003 and 2005, the so-called Act Plan, lies at the foundation of the euro, the common currency of the European Union, which defines itself as a high competitive social market economy. But in Europe, without the political initiative of the European political unity, also in Philadelphia, that is without a truly political union with a sovereign power over state budget and fiscal policies, or the liberalism turns out to be a set of obligations and duties almost impossible to be respected by the European states, with the partial exception of Germany and of some states involved in the German economy. As a matter of fact, the states have no capacity to transfer money from the rich to the poor areas of the system, or to take decisions concerning economic and fiscal policies spending from the whole territory. Consequently, while it was a political and economic victory for Germany, the euro is a political and economic problem for Europe. Because of the presence of nation states characterized by different interior economic performances, the euro became one of the causes of the European crime and fostered anti-European sentiments in many societies. Therefore, there is no such thing as a European strategic power. There is neither a military sovereignty inside, nor an external projections of power, neither the capacity of governing the migrations flows coming from the Mediterranean and the East, nor the ability to intervene in order to grant peace in the Middle East. As far as the economy is concerned, export is strong, but Europe is also weakened by the very instrument that was supposed to strengthen it, that is the euro. So that the European gross domestic product growth is always too slow. Lastly, also the progression of the legitimating democratic and social narrative is weakened by the inadequate performance of the European system as a whole. Today, inside an international context marked by the conflict that Europe is not prepared to face, its former claim to be a civil power fails. In more general terms, precisely the difficulties found in applying the three patterns of political management of globalization described above show that political power is necessary. Even though the powers of several political entities are radically changed, these are the only way of inhabiting the global world and cannot be substituted neither by a capitalistic universalism nor by its multitudinary reverse. Today, in the winter of globalization, when its free trade functioning is at least partially interrupted and its constitutive contradictions are blown up, the three times of power, political, economic, and cultural power, more clearly converge towards strategies based on a specific political centers of power. In a general sense, we can define this center as states, since they maintain the internal unity of the three powers and the capacity of politically, economically, and culturally projecting them outside. Politics accompanies and promotes the economy. In some cases, it also corrects its unrestrained tendency. Transpositions against outsourcing is intended. Furthermore, politics and economy produce mainstream cultural patterns and legitimating narratives. As I said, however, these centers of power are structurally and reciprocally open. They are crisscrossed by economic flows, lines of valorization, and nomadic migrations movements that cut the borders and crumble society, but also by emergencies and struggles. Furthermore, these specific centers of power are challenged by the universalistic power of capitalism that does not care about borders and that pushes on a global scale both that injuries civil war and the reactions of power of the the Islamic world to the Western way of thought. It is therefore true that the global age displays new features, that is pluralism and neo-pluralism, and that universalism is denied, both by the new differentiating logics of geoeconomy and by the traditional reasons of geopolitics. In other words, it is true that the space is still determined, conflictual and necessary, and that the struggle for the occupation of the space involving the United States, Russia and China revolves around the political will that overcomes also economy and the legitimating narrative. However, it is also true, and it must be repeated, that this speciality is plunged into a sea of transversal economic relations and in a notion of terroristic or asymmetric conflicts. These conflicts and those relations prevent these spaces from becoming fortresses, challenge their boundaries, increase their internal authoritarianism, and the recourse to legal and political emergency devices. Consequently, neo-imperial sovereignties are continuously flawed and displaced, and they are compelled to incorporate lines of force and violence that cannot be completely circumscribed and controlled. In sum, they aim to accept the impossibility of determining and neutralizing their own contradiction. In other words, they face an endless crisis. However, it would be inappropriate to say that they are in ruins. On the contrary, we are facing new complex conceptual and spatial geometries rather than the complete absence of form. Of course, there are also sovereignties in ruins. There are the failed states, and they are not a few, and there are states completely subjected to the sphere of influence of others, and they are many. This complex geometry is marked by the coexistence of different scales of power, forces and interests that tend to be universal, by local conflicts and struggles, potentially conflictual and actually independent great powers. In this context, which is an intermediate situation from both a political and conceptual point of view, great politics is the center and hence constitutes the nose of the earth, the function that enables to decipher the global politics. However, this nose does not aid the center, and is therefore incapable of ordering globalization. It is a paradoxical figure of disorientation rather than of orientation. In this game, in this multi-scale space, in this articulated time, what's left of Europe, which is not able to be a state, not even a federal one, and what about its nation states? From the point of view of effectiveness, which is politically decisive, neither these states nor the neoliberal narrative are up to the global scenario. From the point of view of the three above-mentioned forms of power, in different ways, each European state expresses a obviously small power. Besides, the establishment of a unitary continental power would be impossible, not only because the United States and Russia would oppose it, but also because it is not in their agenda of European political elites that aim at achieving their oligarchical objectives in the construction of the euro, and that, from a political point of view, still base their extremely narrow legitimacy on the nation state. On the other side, notwithstanding its weakness, the remaining loyalty of the citizens is directed toward the state, whose solidity is seen at the last bulwarks against the social destruction produced by neoliberalism. So, the European nation state is a past that does not pass, suspended between the not anymore and the not yet. Its weakness is still a political resource that should be overcome, but is nonetheless necessary when better resources are unavailable. The European state is not strategically relevant, but is the bridging structure at stake in the political and institutional struggle in Europe, both from a symbolic and from a tactical point of view. The The right wing is well aware of this relevance of the state. In fact, it is trying to appropriate it, answering by this to the people's demand of protections from the effects of globalization. The right-wing populist policies emerge from below, but are now directed by the negatives from above, and in all cases remain anti-democratic. Therefore, also the left wing should be aware of the relevance of the state. Also from the state, not only from multitudes of social movements that rise from the contributions of the present and that are not to be neutralized in the party nor in the state, and that must remain loyal to the institutional parties. The left, armed of critical thought that is of its own cultural power, should realistically respond in order to both enact anti-liberal economic policies and to think a Europe finally made of social and democratic states animated by a will of justice. From these states, Europe should draw its internal political and ideal consistency, so as to present itself on the global scene as a recognizable power led by a coherently humanist culture and by adequate economic and political powers. The left should move towards Europe through the states of the peoples, not of the populists, rather than against them. In conclusion, for a political thought and practice that aim to be both critical and realistic, the challenge consists of pursuing the strategic, democratic and social power of united Europe through the combination of social movements and of political states in a neo-democratic reappropriation of the states in order to overcome them in a strong federation. In fact, also critical theory should adhere to reality if it wants to change it. Otherwise, reality emerges. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Galli, for this illuminating and also provoking talk. We can open the floor for discussion, but not before I warn you, as I was instructed to do, that we need to evacuate the room by 8:45. By 8:45, but that leaves us a few minutes at least for discussion.
Yeah, oh, wow. Thanks for your interesting presentation. And I'm completely out of this field. I'm a medical doctor, so please be kind. The question is not, it may be a bit naive, but I followed your arguments. And up to a certain point, I was following that, but in the end, I got a bit lost because it seems by your analysis that the current situation is rather structural. Especially what you described about Europe and about the states being weak in their sovereignty and power. Yet, in the very end, you seem very kind of optimistic that if the left sees a strong Europe made by democratic states, all will turn to the West. I would like to ask you, where is the leverage for this to happen? What are the powers that need to be put in place? And how do you see this happening in reality? Thanks.
everyone who knows me knows that I am not an optimistic man. But we must indicate, we must show a way to go outside our situation, and it's under our eyes. Political struggle in Europe is struggle against the state. You see France, you see Germany, you will see Italy next year. Yes. This is the only level in which something can change. It's very, very difficult, but it's the only way, I think, that in which something can change, because I know that that political power, that is, in our ages, state, political power can be more powerful than the economic power. Or as powerful as economic. And political power now is the power of the state. Only states can orient economy. Only states can govern economy in a very difficult way, in a contradictory way, but only states, or superpower, super states. And in Europe, states are national states. That every national state is not the level of the problem, I know. But only national states can unify themselves in some federation of states, able to govern economy and to project power outside. Because I think that this is the only way to inhabit our world. And this is not a very strange idea, it's a very old idea. And this idea that is realized under our eyes every day. Globalization is not a chaos. Globalization is a logic. Several logics, difficult to understand, and they are geo-economical and geopolitical logics. So, from a realistic point of view,
thank you. I wanted to ask you, do you consider the corporation an entity that exercises sovereignty over other people's lives? Why or why not? And what are the implications of your answer?
If I understand your question, the power of corporations on the life of persons, yes. It's precisely our experience of every day. And you must ask, how can we how can we contrast this power? Which are the means of contrasting of this power? I'm here in where now I live and I work. I hear some propositions of this kind. In order to weaken the power of the corporations, we must liberalize, we must open our society to the market, to the power of the market. This is the way in which the power of the corporations is weakened and the subject and the citizen as more power. I cannot understand this logic. I am unable to understand. In order to weaken the power of the corporations, I only aim one idea, to contrast that power with another power. And another power is the political power. And the political power in Europe is the power of the states, of democratic states. So the social state wants nothing else but the balance between the balance, not more, the balance between the power of the democratic state and the power of corporations. Corporations were also in 40s, 50s, 70s. But have to face the political power of the democratic states. This is the only way, I think, to contest that power that is the experience of every day. And every day we face the corporation power and we face a state that allows the corporation power to come over us. This is our problem. The state is the solution, or can be the solution. My opinion.
Io non resisto. Posso? Sorry, I have used your attention, but well, before the end of the Cold War, the global space was limited, was controlled, was not open. Thus, it was not simply the state that had the power to react against the corporation, but this division within the geographic unit of the world. So the state was not the issue, so strong enough to limit the corporation. The corporations were limited because of this division of the world. Now that the space is totally open, the corporations are free to go wherever they want, but the state is not free, and there are no longer limitations that contain the power of the corporation. It's not this the issue, more than simply the strength or not of the state.
Also, it is a problem. You must consider that when I say state, I say superpower. Nation states, European nation states are a problem. Superpower are a reality. We see the power of corporations all over the world, globalization as outsourcing of manufacturing and so on. It's true, obviously. In the last instance, I think that the power of corporations is oriented by the power of the superpowers. There are American corporations, there are Chinese corporations, and German corporations. They are not European corporations. But American corporations wants to make a profit for themselves, not for the United States, obviously. But in a large scale, at the end, there is an American strategy toward the world, and of this American strategy, corporations are a part. There is a Chinese strategy toward the world, and the big Chinese corporations are a part of this strategy. In the Chinese world, there is a political command over politics. In an American world, perhaps there is not a direct command of politics over the economy. But I think that there is the possibility for the politics, American politics, to orient the ways of economy in the world. I think that in last instance, in these realities, politics govern. Politics. I'm not saying that I like all of this. But what I like is not a problem for anyone. I think that from a realistic point of view, it is necessary to be critical and not to be fantastic. And to be critical, we must see that there is imperialism. There are imperialism and not imperialism. This is the point. The world is not a unity, but the world is in war, because there is a pluralism of powers, of political powers. In last instance, in last instance are sovereign. Sovereign that means can there are Willensmacht in the world, and Willensmacht is military, Willensmacht is economic, and these powers, the superpowers, are three centers in the world, not more. Europe is not in this world. This is a problem for Europe, obviously.
Hello, Professor. I have two sort of related questions. One is if you could maybe speak to, you very briefly mentioned the role that social movements play and emphasize the role of the state, obviously, which is why you're arguing. I wonder, in the Americas, for instance, we have maybe a different perspective. In this regard, there's a coupling of state and popular social movements, particularly in the last decade. What possibilities are there, if any, of the social movements in Europe to provide a kind of reproduction of the social that is not subsumed by the logic of capital, if any? Because you seem to kind of really underestimate the role that movements more generally or popular struggles have in waging an affirmation of life beyond the death and the war that capitalism implies that you described. So if you could maybe talk a little bit about that. And then secondly, if you could maybe tell us, and not American, for instance, thinking about the Zapatista struggle, which is still around, even though the so-called pink tide has seceded, for instance. So even when electoral politics is well, whatever, I think you get my point. So the second question is related to the first. I wonder what you make of two forces here in Europe, Civiltà and Podemos. What do you make of these two movements?
So, what we call social movements are obviously political movements, and are expressions of the contradictions of our times and of the structures of power and the economic structures of our society as follows. The question is, these movements are the only form of political energy, political power. So, in this moment, I think that they are the only form of political energy in Western societies. What is the problem? Because it's the only form of radical, critical, political power against establishment and its contradictions are social movements. Social movements will be defeated. This under our eyes from 20 years. From January, will be defeated by the power of the state, of the repressive power of the state, the political power. So the solution of this problem is obviously a political party. Party means a political subject that is open to society and can grasp the political energy of the movements and is open toward the state and is able to work in the institutions. It's not a case that political party is the enemy of the narrative of neoliberalism. It's the biggest enemy. There are 40 years that the energies of the political media, of the social media, of Western civilization are oriented against the concept, against the reality of the party. Because the party is the solution. It is something open, turbulent, the energy of the society, and party does not neutralize this energy. In my conversation I said that movements must remain parallel in the state, and the bridge is party. This is a ought to be obviously. In our times there are not parties. In Italy, especially in Italy, there are no parties. And no one wants to make them different. No one. But the party is the solution. For people, obviously, for the corporation, for the state, poverty is the enemy. So, when you ask me about Podemos, Civiltà, I stress that in Italy we have nothing like these movements. The force of the contradiction against establishment in Italy is in a movement that is very different from Civiltà, Podemos, and so on. A movement that has neutralized at all the political energy of people. I don't want to speak about today politics, today Italian politics. But in general, I think that the way of movements that make themselves parties, like Podemos, like Civiltà, is the only way, full of difficulties, obviously, but is the only way. Without grasping the state, we have no power, we have no sufficient power to change anything in this world.
Before thanking Professor Galli, I need to ask you to please leave the entire building because there is a concert and please leave the building without making too much noise. But before doing that, please thank me, Professor Galli.